Welcome to the Perfect Pairing Podcast. Today we are smoking the cigar of the week, the Artista Harvest.
But before we get to that, my name is Chris, and I am the whiskey expert and the cigar noob.
And I'm Adam, and I'm the cigar expert, but the whiskey noob.
And today, as Adam mentioned, we're finding the perfect pairing for this Artista Harvest box pressed. Is this a Robusto? I think
It's
it's a
a
Robusto.
Robusto. Come on, Robusto.
Robusto. Okay. All right. Hot take. All right. Robusto feels like when somebody's like, yeah, I went over to the cafe yesterday and I got a croissant, and then I did. Like, it feels like you're forcing it at. You know what? I know that's the proper way, but that's what it feels like.
That's fair, I guess. It's kind of like, is it Brulati or Bruichlatic?
Yeah, exactly. It's like, where do we draw the line with these accents? You know,
Well, it's Robusto. It's not that hard to say. Come on.
Robusto. All right, fair enough.
But as Chris said, it is a box pressed cigar, and that is the trivia question of the week. What and how? Sorry. What was the origin of box press cigars? How did box press cigars come about? This it's in case you don't know what a box press cigar and you're on the audio version. It's basically a box, right? It's really a rectangle, So that's a little bit of a hint for those people out there. It's more of a rectangle shape than a box, so maybe the whole shape doesn't have a whole lot to do with it, but. It's more of a rectangle, but it's flat on all four sides pretty much. So it's not a round cigar like you would typically see. So it does add a little bit of a different smoke. I have actually smoked the same blend, same size, not of this cigar. It was an Asylum cigar, but same blend, same size, same everything. But one was a round cigar and one was a box pressed, and I could tell the difference in taste. So it does supply a different taste because cigars are all about edges. And because of the heat distribution, its edges are the name of the game. That's why pyramids exist. That's why figurados exist. That's why they do it. It's not just for advertising purposes. It actually has a difference in the taste.
Okay, so I do have a guess, and
All right.
there's zero base for this guess. Just so you know, this isn't like one of those things where I'm like, I think I heard this. This is just fully based on looking at box press cigars.
Fair enough.
I'm gonna guess it is some type of an accident where they like got squished, and then it was like, oh, this is like a squished cigar. This tastes different. That's my guess. It was like either you're jamming them all into the box of cigars, or they're all stacked for some reason and they smush each other. That's my guess.
So Chris thinks they're idiots and they just smashed a bunch of cigars together. No, I'm just kidding. I'm just kidding.
I just know that many good discoveries are made by accident.
Yeah, fair enough. I'm excited, so I'm gonna go ahead and light this up. I've got this new blue paleo lighter. It's a 3. Look at that. Look at how clean that is. Those 3 flames. You can see that pretty good. I'm gonna do it for the side cam here.
I gotta up my
But-
lighter game because that looks sweet. I have just a tabletop. This is actually for scorching wood chips in a cocktail smoker. So I need to up my lighter game.
We gotta upgrade. Chris and I were talking off camera about upgrading your guys' game and maybe doing some giveaways with lighters and cutters. But I think I may have to take care of him first before I take care of you guys. We'll see. Because I think I have I have 2 cigar boxes full of lighters.
Oh my gosh.
So
Jeez.
I don't know. It's probably like 20, 30 different lighters.
I have like a handful of lighters and I lose a lot of them. And most of them are just like cheap ones that I just pick up here and there, you know. But I'll give you a second to light while I go into the first pairing that we've got. This has been on the show before, so today's pairing is Lodestar Whiskey. So this is a blended whiskey for those who don't remember. It's a blend of high rye bourbon and American single malt whiskey. This is a super duper unique whiskey. It does not taste like anything else that I have on my shelf right now because it's a blend of 2 very different tasting whiskeys. And what we found with the first pairing is that it just didn't work out quite right. And something I've learned about pairings is the super unique whiskeys, it's hard to find a pairing for because you can't just say, oh, this is a high rye bourbon and I've had this cigar with a high rye bourbon, so this cigar should go well with it. It's a unique whiskey. I have no idea what's going to go with it. So I'm excited to try it out again and give it another shot at a new cigar.
Yeah, I'm excited as well. I was kind of let down the last time. I can't remember which exact cigar it was we had with the Lodestar. I feel like maybe it was Luciano's uh, Foreign Affair. But I do remember being a little bit disappointed and saying, damn, like, I was really excited because I know on the last episode for sure that I mentioned this cigar freaks me out, or sorry, this whiskey freaks me out because I can't figure it out. So I'm really excited to find a good cigar with it because I'm like, I need a good cigar with this whiskey so I can feel in my comfort zone and I can start to understand this whiskey more because my palate's just not there in the whiskey world. So, yeah, I'm excited that we've got this in the lineup again.
Yeah, me too. Me too. And you're not alone there. I mean, it's a strange whiskey. That's what I love so much about it. Usually a unique whiskey is going to run you a ton of money, and this is like $45 for a bottle. That was where I really was like, "Oh, this is a solid whiskey." And they are not paying me to say that, by the way. That is just my opinion. So, I'm going to dive into this Artista here.
Oh, praise be Jesus. Praise be Jesus. Oh my gosh.
I don't know if I've had. Oh, I just realized you're talking about the pairing, aren't you?
No. I'm not gonna be biased. I'm not gonna ruin your opinion. But
Yeah, you're gonna bias me.
yeah, the Lord is good. That is delicious. All right, you were gonna say something about the cigar. Go ahead.
I was gonna say I don't know if I've had an Artista, but this logo looks super familiar. And
No,
uh,
yeah, you remember. Come on, cigar of
okay,
the
we've
week, the
had it.
Artista Midnight. Yeah.
The Midnight, that's what it was. Okay, that's what I thought. I was like, this logo's super familiar, but this is not tasting familiar, so I wasn't sure.
So this is the kind of, I guess, what you want to say next in this series. So for all of those that were in the Perfect Pairing Club, the first ever cigar of the week was the Artista Midnight. This is kind of the next up in this series, if you will, with the Artista Harvest. There is a third in this trifecta, but yeah, your face just nailed it. But we will get there. But this is a cigar that has a very unique Sumatra wrapper, a Cameroon binder, which, mind you, a Cameroon binder is very rare, and then it has a very distinct proprietary Dominican blend as the filler. So this is a complex cigar. For those out there that maybe smoked the Midnight and were like, man, this is one of your go-to reliables, this cigar right here is going to really test your palate. It's going to really I'm anticipating, I've smoked it plenty of times, but I'm anticipating even as we go along these pairings, that first third, that second third, and that final third of this cigar, it changes. It's going to really evolve. And already with this first pairing, I can tell that it's ready to play. It's ready to really just be a great cigar for an experimental pairing experience like we're going to have today. So I'm super excited. And yes, guys, I can say it now because I saw Chris's face. This is a good pairing. We found it for the Lodestar. We found it. This works.
Yeah, and I didn't even know why it worked until you just gave that description. I mean, you've got basically two mutants. You've got a whiskey that is a mutant of bourbon and American single malt. You've got a cigar that's got multiple different tobacco leaves. I think you said Sumatra and Cameroon. And so they're both pulling out of multiple different sources for their types of flavors. And that just is a really nice combo. So far, immediately when I took a sip of the Lodestar, the whole flavor profile was elevated. Everything was stronger. I noticed a little bit more right off the bat, just like a knee-jerk reaction. It reminded me of raisin, but that was off of one sip, so, I'm
No,
just
I could
taking
see it.
stabs at it. But that's what it was really reminding me of.
I could definitely see it on that end. And going back to the cigar after you taste the whiskey, the cigar becomes really bold and not in a harsh way, a very just full flavor. I mean, just like one of those, that makes you really salivate. It's one of those cigars that I was super pumped about it because this cigar was already kind of like, oh, interesting, and then it just elevates it. This is a complementary pairing through and through. Both are so elevated. I'm just so happy with it. This is 100%, not to give away my rankings or anything because I don't know what it is yet or ratings, but this pairing I would have today, I will have tomorrow, I will have the next day until I run out of Lodestar or Artista Harvest.
Yeah, I'm with you there. Let me ask you this. What type of a flavor does Cameroon usually bring to it? Because I have a theory,
Cameroon
but I don't know much about the wrapper or the
Cameroon
binder.
usually has a little bit of a sweetness to it. It's a very delicate wrapper, or tobacco leaf, which is why typically you find it on the wrapper side, not the
Hmm.
binder side. A Cameroon binder is not very common, which is why this is an intricate and complex cigar, and
Hmm.
has complex flavors. But you're gonna get you're gonna get a little bit of a spice, but a little bit of a light spice. You're gonna get a little bit of maybe hay on that end, but it does have a slight sweetness to it. It's a very approachable. I This may be a hot take in the cigar world, but in my opinion, you go Connecticut and then you go Cameroon for me. I feel like it's very approachable, even though some Cameroons can be heavy hitting, which is not. I'm not talking about on the body in terms of it hitting you. I'm talking about kind of just the approachableness on the palate.
Hmm.
That vibe. I think Cameroon is very easy on the palate. I don't know if that's has anything to do with the fact that it's a delicate wrapper, but that's just in my opinion. Again, it may be a hot take in the cigar world, but in my opinion, it's a very approachable flavor.
Well, I think I'm with you because that's actually what I was wondering was you said it's like for you Connecticut then Cameroon, and this was giving me some of the approachable vibes of like a Connecticut, but like darker flavors. So it was like instead of the white sugar, you got the brown sugar. That's kind of what it was reminding me of.
What I think is happening there is the Sumatra is adding that little kick, that little oomph to it that you're having. And because it's the wrapper, that's the
Hmm.
bold flavor. I think the fact that the binder is not super bold and it's a bold wrapper, I think that's what that play is where your palate's going like, what the heck? Like
Hmm.
it's really searching for that commonality that you typically get out of a cigar. So your palate's like, oh, this is kind of like a Connecticut, and then you're also like, but this smokes like maybe like a really easy Maduro. Like if you remember the GTO La Cura, like
Hmm.
almost got like that vibe in there. So like, how is that? And I think it's just because of the complex tobacco in here, and then that Dominican filler. It's a proprietary blend. We don't know if that's heavy Ligero or if it's which for those people out there, heavy Ligero means it's a very strong cigar. If it's not if it's some Viso or some Seco in there in terms of the filler. So we don't know on that Dominican end if it's. I guess we'll find out at the very end if we stand up and we're like, oh, okay, that one hit.
Hmm.
But in my opinion, I think for those people out there worried maybe that this is going to be a little too strong or anything or too light, I think this is a very medium-bodied cigar. I think it's a very approachable flavor, and it's not something that's going to hit you too hard. So if you're worried about the color of the wrapper looking a little darker, that's just that Sumatra shade that you're seeing. So yeah,
No, I totally agree with you. I think that's exactly this is like standing on the line of medium because like dead center because it's like it's not medium to where it's like in between mild and heavy. It's medium where it's like some aspects of a heavier cigar, some aspects of a lighter cigar kind of combined. It's really, which is almost probably why it goes so well with the Lodestar because the Lodestar has your high rye bourbon with your punchy flavors and it's got your single malt, American single malt with some mellow malty flavors. And they're both like this kind of dichotomy where they've got both sides of the spectrum.
I think that maltiness is coming out in the cigar.
Mm-hmm.
I think
I could
that's
see
the
that almost like a
complexity that I'm seeing.
yep, like a cereal grain kind of comes through.
Yeah, 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 100%.
Mm.
Now moving forward, these next two, I'm super excited. You can correct me if I'm wrong, but I don't think we've ever had the same company for two of the pairings
I
in
think you're
a
correct.
single episode. So I'm excited because I love trying things that are similar. Like when I smoke a
Hmm.
cigar, and like I was saying with that Asylum, made by the same company, same blend, that's when your palate really notices the intricacies because you're comparing two things that are very similar, but you're having them at the same time. So you get to experience it rather than I had this one week, that one week. Maybe you're like, oh well, they taste the same. So
Hmm.
I'm excited moving forward here.
Yeah. I think some aspects of it you're gonna love, and then some aspects are gonna be pretty different because we've got two different hard truth bottles here, and hard truth does have like a distinct flavor to a lot of their products. And part of the reason for that is that they use a sweet mash. So rather than using a sour mash that a lot of companies use, it's very common. You've probably heard the term sour mash. Doesn't mean that the whiskey's more sour. I should have said this for a trivia question, but we're already talking about it, so I'm just going to say it.
I
So
would have gotten that wrong.
so a sour mash means that you leave a little bit of the mash from the previous batch that you ran, and you use that mash to kickstart the next batch. Kind of like if you've ever heard of Amish friendship bread, it's the same idea. You use a little bit of this fermented stuff to kickstart the fermentation of the next thing. So
Okay.
Hard Truth uses a sweet mash, which means they're not doing that. And it gives some pretty unique flavors, which I personally have really enjoyed. This was Hard Truth, their sweet mash rye was my second barrel pick because I really like their stuff. So we're going to have some similarities in that, but we're going to have a bourbon and we're going to have a rye. So they're going to be a little different in that regard. And I'm excited to see two very different kind of perspectives of a similar thing, kind of like you said, where you have them back to back, so you get to see both sides of it. So we're starting off with Hard Truth's Farmer's Reserve Sweet Mash. This is a blend of straight whiskeys. I may have lied to you. Is there also some rye in here? Let me look.
Well,
It's got rye and bourbon blended. I was wrong about that. Okay.
okay. That's good to know. Because I was looking at it, and it doesn't say bourbon on the front, big and bold. And I was like, it was one of those moments for me as a whiskey noob. I was like, I don't see bourbon. Why are you calling it a bourbon? What am I not getting?
Yes. So if you go over to the side label down towards the bottom, let me show it on the side camera here. It actually says on it that it is a blend. It's a perfect marriage of our chocolate malt rye and sweet mash bourbon, rested on toasted Amburana wood. And Amburana, as you're probably about to experience, has a pretty specific flavor that it brings along with it as well. So we're going to get some pretty different flavors in these next couple of pairings, which is going to be really interesting, I think.
I actually am familiar with Amburana barrels, which is nice. A local distillery here, ASW, they had an Amburana cask bourbon that they had, and I was a super big fan of it because I'm kind of I lean more on the rum side typically than the whiskey side in terms of cigar pairings. So I've had a lot of rum. So I think Amburana is typically a rum cask, right? It's a Brazilian wood. So I think that's why that flavor comes out in terms of, at least that's my whiskey noob knowledge that I think I'm tossing out there to everybody.
I'm just going to believe you because I don't know the first thing about rum. So so I'll just believe you on that one.
Fair enough. I'm right, everybody. I like that. Chris doesn't know something. Adam's right. That sounds like a good plan to me.
We just get to roll with it, and because this is pre-recorded and not live, there's nobody fact-checking us.
And then we get a barrage of people in the Discord after this episode comes out that are like, these guys don't actually know what they're talking about.
Hey,
the Amburana barrel is not Brazilian. It's actually from like Atlanta. This guy, and it's in his backyard, and he doesn't know.
Right. You'll have some of that. I've had a lot of that on Whiskey Noob, so it's okay.
Yeah, it happens. We're not perfect, guys. Come on.
But our pairings are. Thus the name.
Bingo.
This could be a silent 15 minutes because I can't figure this out.
Yep. I if you guys can't tell, we were probably trying to volley each other there in the conversation. I was like trying to do a little one-off and then taste, and you were doing the same.
Yeah. I like it when that happens. That's how you know something's really complex, because we're like, okay, I'm going to say one sentence, and now I'm going back to tasting. And I got to say another sentence now? Okay, now I'm going back to tasting. Like, we keep doing that.
Yeah. No, this is a very intricate pairing, guys. Just so you know, I'll go ahead and commentate on what I'm getting here off the bat. I'm thinking both are almost, I want to say, like, similar. In a way that they're almost like gelling to where neither are changing, but there's something going on, and that's the pause. That's That's why that's the hesitation that we both have, in my opinion.
Hmm.
Like they're both marrying very well. Like I feel like if you aged this Artista Harvest in a barrel that had this exact hard truth Farmer's Reserve in it, that it wouldn't change a whole lot because I feel like
Hmm.
there's just such a similar taste on your palate, and it's kind of odd. I think this may be one of the first times that we've had that sort of mixture in this pairing, in this podcast at least. It's yeah. That's my segue into. I'm gonna go ahead and taste it some more. So good luck, Chris, with filling the time.
Hey, you took the words right out of my mouth, though. I mean, no, 100%. That's where I was doing so much tasting is because I was like, they're both. Neither of these are changing very much. Now, I did a ton of back and forth, like back, forth, back, forth, back, forth. And I got a little bit of sweetness to come out of the Farmer's Reserve. When I went back to it finally, it was like, okay, this is a little bit sweeter. But for the most part, you're spot on. These have very similar flavor profiles. You've got a little bit of this dark sweetness like brown sugar. You've got a little bit of this cracked pepper spice. You've got a little bit of that cinnamon from the Amberana, and it's also in the cigar a little bit. You said they were gelling together. That's a perfect adjective. I mean, they really are. They're marrying together a little bit, which if you're looking for like an ultra pairing or you're looking for something super unique, that's not going to check the box for you. But if you're looking for, I want my whiskey to taste like my whiskey and my cigar to taste like my cigar, and I don't want these to completely change or completely mutate, then that's kind of what this pairing is. This is like, if you don't know pairings, this is what you think a pairing is going to taste like, where they're both kind of similar and they don't change very much. And you just kind of enjoy both of them for what they are.
You know, that is a very interesting take. That's a very interesting take. If you don't know pairings, you're not commonly pairing things, and you have this, you're like, yeah,
Yep.
that's a great point. It's almost like we're expecting something. It's like it's where you go to expectations, right? Like it's
Hmm.
like when you smoke a Connecticut and it happens to not be super light, and you're like thrown off. Like it's always about what are you expecting when you go into an experience, and if you're kind of new to this, if you're not a whiskey noob, not a cigar noob, but you're a pairing noob, maybe that you're looking at this and you're like, guys, that last one was way over my head. That
Hmm.
Lodestar and this cigar, I that was kind of like too much for my palate. But this one, nice and smooth, nice and easy, nice and gelling. I'm having a good time here, and I want to mention that it's a good pairing. It's not a bad pairing. Like it's really there's nothing going on here that I'm
Hmm.
like, oh my gosh, like this something needs to change. It's really just surprising for us because we're looking for, something to talk about. Left, right, up, down, like this differences. It's just one of those where it's like, yeah, solid.
Exactly. That's exactly right. It just tastes good and nothing crazy is happening. And some people I think want that from their pairings. You want to just be tasting it for what it is. So I do think people will enjoy that. But that is a perfect segue into I'm dying to know what happens with the sweet mash rye. So that's what we have next is Hard Truth's sweet mash rye. And this is their chocolate malt bottle specifically, which has super interesting flavors going on with it. I've only had it a couple of times, so I'm excited to dig a little bit deeper into it. But it, well, I don't want to say what I think I got from it before because I want to actually taste it and make sure I'm right. But good advertising with a chocolate malt name.
Yeah, yeah. I mean that honestly, I would love to know as a trivia question, what allows that? Is it one of those advertising things like we already have mentioned in the past, the cigar blend with that copper and cask that we had,
Hmm.
that the cigar blend is not actually really something that's monitored. They can kind of just say it. Doesn't
Right.
have to mean it goes well with cigars. They tried probably to make it pair good with cigars, but for all intents and purposes, any brand could go ahead and say cigar blend and
Yes.
done. So I would be interested. I mean, do you know off the top of your head, like, is chocolate? Like, is that does that have any actual depth to it?
So I did not know until you said trivia question. I was like, I should probably look this up. This is something I should probably know if I'm going to claim to be the whiskey expert. And I had a feeling this was the case, and it is. So it's the type of malt being used in the whiskey. So they use hold on, rye and corn in this mash bill, but then the barley, which is sometimes just called malted barley, is a chocolate malt, which is like a dark colored barley that brings apparently rich coffee flavors. And yeah. So that's something I didn't actually know going into this, but that has me a little bit even more excited to taste this. Haven't puffed a cigar in a while, so I'm going to taste the whiskey first because, like I said, I've only had this a couple of times.
Yeah, go ahead because that was good timing for me because I just went ahead and I went back and forth just a little bit, and it's really bringing out this that Sumatra. What while you were talking, I was kind of probably something in the back of my head, a light bulb went off, and I was like, Sumatra. Oftentimes, again, for me in the cigar world, Sumatra has a little bit of a chocolatey flavor that can come out. Definitely pairings that come around. Can change things or what you eat before and all that sort of stuff. But in my opinion, Sumatra has that little chocolate flavor. In my opinion, I don't like using the chocolate word in cigars, which is why it probably was in the back of my mind and not forefront here. Because chocolate, I never really get like, oh my God, I just ate a Hershey's chocolate bar when I
Mm-hmm.
smoke cigars. I've never gotten that flavor. I may have. I think there's a Tatiana chocolate cigar, and I don't think I've ever had it. But maybe you've had that. But that does not count. That is a flavored cigar for everybody out there. But this flavor, I think that Sumatra is really forefront. This cigar is not backing down to this rye at all. It's very welcoming. I think it's this one and the Lodestar is going to be a very tough little back and forth.
Mm-hmm.
Depending on the day, depending on your flavor profile, depending on what you like. But this pairing's working.
Definitely, definitely. I'm gonna go out on a limb and say, at least at the moment, I think this is an antagonistic pairing. I think the whiskey is staying close to the same, and that Sumatra is just fully elevated. Now, I don't have a lot of experience with Sumatra, but with everything you just described, I'm like, yes, that's what I'm tasting right now. It's got like a cocoa. It's got, I can see, and this might be from the whiskey, a little bit of an espresso, like not necessarily the bitterness of drinking like straight up espresso, but almost the smell of walking into a coffee shop. Like a little bit of that flavor is making it its way into the pairing as well. And neither one's backing down, but I think the cigar is getting a little bit more elevated, and it's really nice. It's interestingly, and I can't wait to go back through all three of them. It's interestingly elevating the cigar in a very different way than the Lodestar, in my opinion. I'm noticing pretty different things than what I noticed with the Lodestar. So I think you're totally right where these might come close to each other, and it might be a matter of your mood or just your taste buds, like what type of preference you have for flavor.
I do agree though on the end of saying it's antagonistic. I was hesitant because I was like I felt like the hard truth was moving and in this again, sorry, we can't just say the brand name. This sweet mash rye
Mm-hmm.
was changing a little bit, but honestly, I do believe that this is a very authentic antagonistic pairing. I went cigar, then straight to the whiskey. So my palate was a little. I didn't have that. I have had a little bit of this whiskey, but it's
Mm-hmm.
the first time I've had this bottle. And for everybody out there, you can see, it's I've had a little bit, but not not anywhere even close to a fourth of the bottle yet. So this blend this whiskey's a little bit new to my palate, but the cigar is not, and the cigar is definitely changing. Very bold. It's almost. I think it's almost to a very dark Maduro wrapper.
Mm-hmm.
It's bringing out a really it's playing as a I want to say in this in the cigar world, maybe you have experienced it or not. I want to say this is one of those LFD double Lejero cigars feels like it's just gonna knock you on your butt, and you're gonna, if you're sitting down and smoking it, you're gonna stand up and you're gonna feel lightheaded for a second because it had a super heavy, strong body. But
Hmm.
this cigar doesn't, as we've already talked about, right? It's very, that Lodestar and even into that Farmer's Reserve, it was very approachable. But I think the blend in this, and I'm gonna go out on a limb and say it is actually, I think obviously the Sumatra and the Cameroon's playing into the complexity, but I think
Hmm.
there's something into this proprietary filler, this third part of the cigar, guys. We've talked about it, the binder wrapper filler. The filler is the very inside, and that's where the oomph comes from. In most cigars, the strength or the lack thereof. But
Hmm.
I think there's something in this Dominican filler where there's something going on there that allows for this play across the board to really match this. What proof is this sweet sweet mash rye?
It is up there. 114.8.
Okay, that makes sense. That I figured as much. I just didn't want to say it. That's what it felt like on my palate for
Hmm.
sure. But I didn't know if it was maybe the rye playing a trick on me because it has that heaviness to it.
Yep.
But yeah, I have not gone back through. Did you have the opportunity to go back through it all yet?
Yeah, I just did, and I changed the rankings with every sip that I took. This is going to be a really difficult one. Um, for sure. I think, here's what I think. It'll come out in the rankings like our own internal biases. But I think that we have one pairing that is really good for the approachable beginner pairing, and we have one pairing that is really good for the big and bold. And you probably have already figured out which ones I'm talking about here.
Yeah.
But the Lodestar is a super approachable whiskey, and it makes the cigar more approachable. The hard truth is high proof. The sweet mash rye chocolate malt specifically is it's big, it's bold, it's got high proof to it, and it makes the cigar big and bold. And you're totally right. It makes it taste a lot like a dark cigar, but almost with a little less of like, I guess I'd say burn, and maybe it's just because the whiskey already has so much on your palate. You're already like salivating, you're getting the tingle in your jaw and in your tongue. And so it takes away some of that from the cigar and you're just getting those big bold flavors. So all of that is my way of stalling to say I tasted Lodestar and was like, "Oh, I think this is number 1." And then I went back through and I was like, "Oh, wait, no, maybe this chocolate malt is number 1." I think I've made a decision. So I'm going to go and type in my rankings right now. But I'll let you talk while I type in my rankings.
Yeah, that's fair. Yeah, I appreciate the longevity there. I
Right.
saw the peak. You're peaking up. Is he ready? Is he ready? Um, it definitely is interesting as you go back through. I was going back and forth. Um, I it's a I was really focusing on the rating side because for me, I think we both know what number three is. And I'll go ahead and say the rankings here. For me, the number three was the Farmers Reserve Sweet Mash. But I think what I was focusing on is where does that
Hmm.
land in the numbers? Because just because it's number three, as we've said before, we've had some low number threes. So those of you out there that have maybe listened to some specific ones where we have all three that are high, um, it's not that it's last. It's that it got the bronze medal in the Olympics, right?
Hmm.
So for me, I'm not necessarily saying this was Olympic style bronze medal, but it wasn't last place. It was just in third in this particular instance with this sweet mash here. But it was a good pairing. Like I said, it was we talked about it. It was simple. It's approachable. It's easy. I would recommend it to anybody that asked me if they said it. I would say yes without a hesitation if there was no other option.
Hmm.
But that's the key. If there was no other option, the options are where you got to play the field a little bit. Going back to that Lodestar, I gotta say I was like, because we went all the way to that big sweet mash
Hmm.
rye. I was like, whoa, this is way different. This is so much lighter. This is so much more approachable, which is funny because I feel like that Lodestar, if you have it just by itself with this cigar, you're not going to think light. You're
Hmm.
you're going to think medium. But
Right.
because that, I think that Sweet Mash Rye was just such a heavy oomph. But I'll go ahead and reveal I'm going the Lodestar second, and I'm going the Sweet Mash Rye first.
Okay. I agree with you. That's the same rankings that I had. And here's the other thing I want to mention. You're going to hear us use this whole bronze medal thing kind of a lot, and some of you might have already caught on to that. That's on purpose because ideally, we're like 12 episodes in. I should be getting halfway good at picking out these pairings. So ideally, I'm picking decent pairings because I've gotten better at doing these pairings. So hopefully, our rankings just keep getting better and better and better. And I'm with you. I've got the Hard Truth Farmers Reserve. I've got that in third, not in last, but in third. I've got the Lodestar next, and then I've got the Hard Truth Sweet Mash Rye Chocolate Malt in number one. And here's where you're going to see where it really shakes out when we say, these are all good pairings. Because for the Hard Truth Farmers Reserve, I've got a 7.0 flat. And that, in general, if we're not comparing to anything, we're just sitting down and rating something, that's a really good rating. That means if you hand it to me, I'm going to enjoy it. I'm going to be happy that I had it. There's nothing that comes out of the pairing that is harsh or bad or I did not like. It was all positives. It just wasn't, enough positives to be better than the other two. So that I had a 7.0 for the Hard Truth Farmers Reserve.
For me, I had a 7.5 because for me, I was like, 3/4. That's kind
Mm-hmm.
of where I was at. Like that is 7.5. You hear it, you're like, nice. Like you're not like
Yes.
wow, or you're not like, oh, okay, so you didn't really like it. It's like 7.5. You're like, all right, so that was good. That's what I had for that one. I'll go ahead on the Lodestar. For me, it went to a little bit of a higher place because I love complexity. Complexity is my favorite thing when it comes to pairings, when it comes to cigars, when it comes to whiskey. I hate familiarity. I hate feeling like I've had something before. This is something that's just whatever. I love the play. I love the play
Mm-hmm.
of these things. So for me, the Lodestar with this Artista Harvest was an 8.3.
Dude, spot on. I had 8.3 as well. This is one of those where if you are handed it, are you going to be able to find something better? Maybe, but it's really good. So, like, you're going to have to pull out all stops if you want to find something that's better than it.
Yep, 100%. So here's what I want to do here on this last one. Since
Okay.
we were tied on the 8.3, we were going to say at the same time. We do have a little bit of a delay for everybody out there in our audio recordings, so maybe it won't be at the same time for you, but it'll be at the same times at least for what we're comparing here. We'll say at the same time what we had for this sweet mash rye. So 1, 2, 3, 8.4.
8.4.
Oh!
All right.
I could have sworn you were gonna say 8.5. I was really trying to set that up so it didn't look like we had the same, like we were winking at each other, or we had some like I'm gonna tug on my ear, or I sneezed earlier, I'm gonna sneeze, and that's how you're gonna know that we're gonna do the same pairing.
We've actually
Golly.
been blinking in Morse code this whole time. You guys just haven't noticed it. So we were making sure we said the same thing. No, dude. Spot on, man. Spot on. And this is one of those where the Lodestar and the Hard Truth Sweet Mash Rye, could be switched depending on if you want a more beginner focused or a more punchy pairing. I like the punchy stuff, and these two, and this is another really great point actually that I just thought of. We went for the antagonistic over the complementary. And that's just because it was a really good antagonistic pairing. Antagonistic doesn't have to be a bad thing. And that Hard Truth Sweet Mash Rye held its own and elevated that cigar to an awesome level. It made the both taste fantastic.
Yep, 100%. And for me, what really put it over the edge, because like I said, I love complexity. So it was a really tough decision. That's why I knew they were going to be point 0.1 differences.
Yep.
But on the Lodestar. I love that complexity. But for me, what really did it was my personal preference. I loved that oomph that it gave the cigar. It was a very pleasant. I've oddly, summertime's, here, I've oddly transitioned into kind of this Maduro phase of my cigar smoking experience. So, like, I
Mhm.
really enjoyed that it elevated that flavor because I love the flavor of the cigar, but then it elevated it to have a little bit more of that strong body, bold cigar flavor. And I was like, oh, that really hit my palate well. And I was like, I just loved it. And that chocolate kick was great. So that was really what did it for me on that end. But
Yeah.
with that said, the trivia question this week, I got some very bad news for the listeners, but some good news for Chris. Chris was right.
All right. I just made that up, dude.
Chris
All
was
right.
right. It was an accident in Cuba when they were packing boxes. If you guys know what a cigar mold is, back in the day, cigar molds did not exist when they were rolling cigars. When you roll a cigar, before you put the wrapper on, all cigars are put in a mold, which is a
Mhm.
very specific shape. So they create the shape these days purposefully. So there's box press cigar molds, but back in the day when before molds, long time ago, they were packing boxes and the cigars were a little too humidified. So they weren't very dry yet. So they were very permeable to shape. So they were put in a cigar box, not again, they're not box shaped like square, they are rectangles because a cigar box is rectangular. So
Oh.
when they were put in there, they were shoved in, they were locked in, and then it came out, and everybody went ballistic. They were like, "These cigars are what? What's wrong with these? What?" But then it just caught on, and oh, some people said, this is unique. And like Chris said, it was one of those moments where a mistake turned into a beautiful experience, a beautiful revelation that led to the box press revolution that is today.
How about that? All right. You know what? I took a little something from my experience with whiskey there because there's been a lot of whiskey things that were accidents and then it became standard. So that's really cool though. That makes a lot of sense because I've always wondered, they're like rectangular, but they're kind of rounded on the sides, so it's almost like they were smushed. And so that's just what I pictured was like you're trying to close a box and it's not fitting and it just kind of smushed all of them. So,
Yep,
all right.
there you go. There you go. And there's some more out there like that. So we'll make sure we include some trivia that we'll try and stump Chris on in the future. But for now,
Right.
guys, I obviously today I've extremely enjoyed the Artista Harvest. That's why I picked the cigar as the cigar of the week. But these pairings were absolutely phenomenal. If you didn't get an opportunity to smoke the Artista Harvest with us, that probably means that you're not in the perfect pairing club or you're not patient enough to wait to smoke the cigar when we release the episode, which I have been getting. A lot of you out there have been messaging me and being like, crap, like I couldn't wait to smoke the cigar for when you release the episode, but then you release the episode and I wish I would have waited. So you guys don't have to wait if you don't want to. You can just subscribe like 4 times. There's no limit, so you could have 4 of each. So just subscribe as many times as you want to the Perfect Pairing Club. But just to help you out, in case you want 5 subscriptions, you can get 10% off of all 5 because you can use the code PPP10 for 10% off your Perfect Pairing Club subscription at shopdreamercigars.com. But Chris, man, this was a great episode, man.
Agreed. Agreed. Great pairings, and hopefully we just keep getting better at picking them out.
Amen. Cheers.
Cheers.